You ever wake up one day and realize you don't even recognize your own life? That was me at 50 years old. I had spent decades building a life that looked perfect from the outside. A stable marriage, 2 grown kids, a home filled with framed pictures and carefully curated furniture. I had checked all the boxes, did all the right things, and yet I felt empty. For years, I ignored it, pushed it down, told myself I was just being ungrateful. I had a good life, a predictable one, a safe one. But safe doesn't always mean happy. The realization hit me on an ordinary Tuesday morning. My husband was drinking coffee, reading the news on his phone. I was making toast, and I looked at him, the man I had spent half my life with, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not love, just a quiet, heavy nothingness. And I knew in that moment I couldn't do it anymore. I didn't have a dramatic reason to leave. There was no affair, no explosive fight. Just the simple, painful truth. I had spent so long being who everyone needed me to be. I had forgotten how to be myself. So I made the hardest decision of my life. I packed a suitcase. He didn't believe me at first. "You're just going through something," he said. "Take a trip, clear your head." But this wasn't a phase. This was the moment I chose me. I left with no grand plan. Just a small apartment in a city I had always loved from a distance and enough money to get by. The first night alone, I sat on my tiny mattress, surrounded by unpacked boxes, and cried until my chest ached. I questioned everything. Had I made a mistake? Was I throwing away my life for some foolish dream of finding myself? Starting over at 50 wasn't glamorous. The first time I walked into a restaurant alone, I felt exposed, like everyone knew I was newly single. Like they could see the gap where my old life used to be. The first time I had to fix something in my apartment, something my husband would have handled, I nearly called him out of habit. But little by little, something shifted. I started drinking coffee slowly instead of rushing through it. I took long walks with no destination. I rediscovered music I used to love. I enrolled in a painting class, even though I had never painted in my life. The first time I smeared colour onto a blank canvas, something inside me clicked. And then I booked a solo trip. Paris, a city I had always dreamed of visiting but never did because it was never the right time. One evening, I sat outside a tiny cafe with a glass of wine, watching the world move around me. And for the first time in years, I felt light. Not because I had everything figured out, not because life was suddenly easy, but because I was finally living for myself. Do I miss my old life? Sometimes. There are moments of loneliness, moments where I wonder what would have happened if I had just stayed. But then I remind myself, staying would have been easier. But leaving, that was brave. And I think sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself.
Shadows softly play in a dreamlike way. Shadows come to life.